This is Atomic Shinobi, and today I'm going to narrate third part of What If Neglected Naruto Was a Generational Genius. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
So first and most importantly, I want to congratulate Team 13 for their great performances in the chunin exams in Suna 5 days ago, and of course well done to my son Naruto for winning the chunin exams. Minato said while sitting at his computer. Naruto, Itachi, and Anko were standing in front of him, the two boys wearing bandages. Naruto had several patches on his face and his right hand and shoulder covered. Itachi's left arm was the same, but he had some patches on his cheeks and bandages wrapped around his chest. Anko, on the other hand, was largely unharmed and only had a set of bandages covering her chest due to breaking 2 ribs in her altercation with Itachi. Because Tsunade and Shizune personally cared for Naruto and his team and poured medical chakra through their systems, the majority of the bruising and minor cuts had disappeared since the chunin exams ended 5 days ago. Before all of the Konoha visitors departed and took 3 days to return home, they spent 2 days in Suna resting and recuperating. However, his father had spoken to him frequently during those 3 days, and Naruto suspected this was because he was interested in his strength and how he had developed it. He anticipated being questioned by his parents when he got home because his mother was looking at him with interest, as though she was trying to understand him. However, his sibling greeted him with joy upon his return, and Mina had remained close to him ever since. He and his team had been asked to come to Hokage's office, and it had taken some ice cream blackmail to get her off him. Several Konoha shinobi council members stood around the room, grinning and giving the 3 young shinobi a gentle clap. Mikoto was also on that side, grinning as proudly as she could, feeling that she had done a good job with her team and that she had assisted 3 outstanding shinobi in the future. Kakashi, Kushina, Shizune, and a few other Konoha Jonin were standing with Tsunade and Hiruzen on the opposite side. Homura, Kaharu, and Danzo, his former teammates and fellow Konoha elders, were then on the opposite side of Hiruzen. Although Naruto thought the 2 elders were a couple of sticks in the mud because they were always acting so solemn, he did not mind them. Danzo, the other guy, gave Naruto a spooky vibe. Tsunade, Shizune, and his Gigi had cautioned that it was best to avoid him. Now I think everyone here would agree with me when I say these 3 have all proved themselves ready to become chunin. Everyone in the room whispered their agreement. Minato took a scroll from his desk and opened it, saying, "Then in that case I believe it's only fitting to have these handed out." He distributed the 3 chunin flak jackets that he had taken out of the scroll. To Anko first, then Itachi, and finally to Naruto, who ruffled his hair joyfully. However, Naruto remained silent and listened to his father without responding. As more clapping and whispering echoed through the office, he said, "Then today I would like to congratulate Anko Mitsubishi, Itachi Uchiha, and Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze on becoming chunin." In addition to shaking hands and congratulating the 3 newly promoted chunin, many clan heads came forward to say how well they all fought and how well they did on the tests. Makoto excitedly stepped forward and gave the 3 of them a big hug, telling them how proud she was of them and how disappointed she was that they were no longer officially a team. Since her team turned into a chunin, Makoto made the decision to go back to being a full-time housewife. She wanted to focus on helping her youngest and middle children now that her oldest was a chunin and had shown that he was strong and had good friends with him. She would still occasionally go on a mission and assist the trio in their training, but her responsibility now was to assist Sasuke and Ria. However, Makoto grinned at Kushina and the other Konoha mothers after she had passed them. She proudly said, "I told you. 1 year and my team became chunin." The other mothers nodded, acknowledging that she was being honest and that she had met the standards Makoto liked to boast about. Kushina frowned and made a mental pledge to defeat her enduring rival in some way. As he, Shizune, and Tsunade approached Naruto, Hiruzen declared, "Chunin Uzumaki Namikaze now." Shizune gave him a hug and a forehead kiss, and Tsunade followed suit. "You have come far since we began teaching that little 5-year-old who wanted to learn to be a ninja. It feels like only yesterday that I found you in the park trying to read that book on chakra," Shizune continued. Grinning, Naruto gave his elder sister figure a hug. "I never did thank you for helping me with that." Shizune placed her head on top of his and grinned, "And you never have to. Well, now that the exams are over it means we can get back to training. Don't think because you're a chunin now that we have nothing left to teach you. Because we all have heaps loads to drill into that hard noggin of yours." Tsunade replied by tapping his head. Tsunade smiled down at him as he said, "Good, because I would have it no other way." The heads of Konoha started to crowd out around them, followed by some of the shinobi and the village elders. Itachi, Makoto, and Anko trailed behind Kakashi and Shizune as they continued their journey. Suande and Naruto were also on the verge of departing, but their trip was cut short. With Kushina by his side, Minato sat back in his seat and remarked, "Naruto, Suande, I was hoping the two of you could remain here for a moment." As Jiraiya left the village, Kakashi gave Minato a nod as he shunshined away. Tsunade and Naruto raised their eyebrows at the same time, which seemed a little strange, but they remained. With a startled glance back, Makoto, Itachi, and Anko departed after Naruto gave them a nod. They did the same to Hiruzen and Shizune, who were taken aback by the scene. Tsunade stood slightly to the side of Naruto as he stood in front of his parents, who were watching him with interest. Naruto asked his parents, who were still staring at him, "Is something wrong?" Kushina took a step forward and looked at her son before responding, "No, there is nothing wrong, but we have some questions we need answering. Naruto, while you showed great promise in the chunin exams, myself and your mother were surprised at just how far along you were in your studies, and we both noticed you used jutsus that were in our library, with the Rasengan being the most noticeable. Can you please tell us why we had no knowledge of this?" replied Minato. With his hands in his pockets, Naruto glanced at his parents, who were staring at him, and raised an eyebrow. He turned to face Tsunade, who merely gave him a nod. He gave them both an unexpected response when he said, "Because neither of you cared enough to help me, so I took matters into my own hands." Kushina defended herself and her husband by saying, "What? Naru-chan, that's not true." Naruto simply glared at her. He asked, paying close attention to their responses, "Really? Okay, then tell me, in the past, what have either of you actually helped me with? What did you train me in?" Both appeared to be about to speak, but they abruptly stopped, and then their faces took on a contemplative expression. While Minato stared up at the ceiling as though both of them were attempting to avoid their son's glare, Kushina bit her lip as she thought. What did we instruct him in? They both thought. Then Minato's expression changed to one of gratitude. Both parents were a little surprised when Tsunade scoffed from her position, but he said, "Well, we helped you with your fuinjutsu. I know we helped you with that." "No, you didn't. Gigi helped me with my fuinjutsu. All you did was give me a book on level 1 fuinjutsu when I was 6. The rest Gigi taught me, or I taught myself." Kushina appeared about to speak, but he restrained himself after realizing he was correct. Kushina leaned in and Minato asked delicately, "What level are you at in fuinjutsu?" He stated bluntly, "I'm just starting level 5. His parents appeared taken aback by the response. Level 5? While Minato was in the same situation, Kushina reflected, "I only started level 5 when I was 13. He surprised Minato and Kushina by saying, "Neither of you helped me with anything, nor did Kakashi and that pervert of a Sanin Jiraiya," as he usually referred to Jiraiya as Uncle Jiraiya, or, when he was younger, Grandpa. They assumed he outgrew it. "Neither of you have truly assisted me in the last 6 years. Shizune-chan helped me control my chakra and taught me how to use poisons and some medical ninjutsu. Tsunade-sensei taught me taijutsu with Gai-sensei and how to condition my body, and Gigi taught me ninjutsu and fuinjutsu. Yes, I did borrow the jutsu from your library, but I made my own copies of the scrolls before returning the originals. And the Rasengan? Naruto, that was an A-ranked jutsu and a dangerous one at that, and one enemies would love to get a hold of. Well, I needed some kind of ace in the hole for the exams. I am grateful for learning the super strength from Tsunade-sensei, but I needed a last resort card. Something no one would see coming. Deception is part of being a shinobi after all." Then Kushina spoke. Knowing that Minato took about 3 years to create the Rasengan and that Jiraiya and Kakashi spent months learning it, she inquired, "Naruto, how long did it take you to master the Rasengan?" Naruto simply gazed at her. Both parents were shocked when he said, "I got the basics down in a week, then refined it during the month." Tsunade and both of his parents now gazed at him in disbelief. It was unprecedented to learn the Rasengan in just 1 week. As a matter of fact, it was almost impossible. 3 of Konoha's finest shinobi, Minato, Jiraiya, and Kakashi, had been outclassed by freshly created chunin. He said, "Naruto, I would have taught you how to learn the Rasengan if you wanted it so badly." Naruto turned his head away. "If I had asked you, all you would have done was brush me off as always and told me you were too busy or that you needed to help the twins." As he started to realize that Naruto might have been correct, Minato glanced down at Kushina's sorrowful, worried gaze on her son. The question caused Naruto to look at her incredulously. "We would have trained you if you had asked us, Naru-chan. I don't remember you asking for much help." He yelled at them, Ask you? While Tsunade shook her head. "You are my parents. I shouldn't have to ask you." For the first 4 years that I training to be a shinobi, all I ever did was ask you to help me and train me. But every time you brushed me off for the twins. You pushed me aside like I didn't even matter, and Eiji and Mito got everything. I understand for the first year or two since they were babies and needed the added attention, but neither of you ever even tried. It was Mito this, Eiji that. And then Mina was born, and then things got even worse. Now I don't hate my sibling, far from it, I love each of them very dearly. But do you know how hard it was seeing you spend so much time with them and having no time ever for me for almost 6 years straight? You were supposed to be my parents and you let me down because you favored your other children over your oldest when you should have treated them equally. After finishing his tirade, he wiped away a stray tear that had fallen down his cheek and turned to leave the office, leaving two parents in complete shock. Tsunade sighed, still leaning her back against a wall. She finally spoke up, grabbing the attention of the red-headed and stunned blonde, and said, "I hope you realize the damage you have caused to him." At first, neither of them spoke. Instead, they sat there repeating what Naruto had told them, seemingly attempting to make sense of what they had just heard and seen. As he spoke, Minato had trouble with his wording. He continued to struggle with what he had just seen and heard, saying, "That what Naruto said. I was not true, was it? I mean, did wa? We favor the others more than with Naruto. I just don't know what to make of this." Kushina gave a defiant shake of her head. "It can't have been true. We would not favor our younger children over our eldest. I know it. It has to be some kind of mistake. Naruto. Hey, he is just confused and he is tired, that's all. He needs his rest, the exams were taxing on him." Tsunade squinted as she approached the two and took a position slightly in front of Kushina. When she did, Kushina staggered back and fell to the floor as a loud slap reverberated throughout the office. As a red mark appeared and started to sting, Kushina held her cheek. Minato rose and approached his spouse. As he did, Tsunade stood above them, her hazel eyes glaring down at them, making them feel small. "You both really don't see the damage the two of you have been doing to him, do you? Just because you two idiots have not seen it does not mean no one else has seen it," she said in a surprise to them both. "I have seen you ignore Naruto for the good part of the last 3 years. The last few years were not as bad, but it still happened. I noticed it, Sarutobi-sensei noticed it, Shizune, Mikoto. Hell, even Mikoto's kids and Naruto's friends saw it. I wouldn't be surprised if other shinobi or even civilians began to see it." Minato asked somewhat angrily, but he backed off when Tsunade gave him a glare. "If that's true, then why did no one say anything?" he asked. "No one said anything because Naruto asked us not to. He got in his head that you would finally see what you were doing and that you would finally start paying attention to him, yet you never did. In fact, it got worse to the point that he even started feeling like he was a stranger in his own home." The distraught Kushina was trying her hardest to hold herself together by this point, but it was clear from the look in her eyes that she wanted to cry. All he ever wanted was for the two of you to notice him, to teach him how to be a shinobi like all the other parents in the village and the other villages do. You two are supposed to be two of the village's best. You are supposed to be setting an example for the younger generations, and you are supposed to look after this village. As her scowl deepened, Tsunade grabbed them both by the collars and drew them to her face. "How are you supposed to do that when you can't even see when your oldest child is in pain? Whether you want to admit it or not, you two have failed Naruto." Subsequently, she let them fall to the floor, left, and shut the door. When Tsunade's words started to hit them, Kushina and Minato just sat on the ground, expressionless, while Kushina put her hand to her mouth to stop her sobs. Minato's eyes widened in shock. House. As he entered his house, Naruto continued walking up the stairs without pausing to hear his siblings' greetings. He went to his room, tossed his chunin flak jacket against the wall, and slammed the door. "The nerve. They have no right to believe that I am deceiving them. They truly aren't able to see their mistakes, are they?" he mentally yelled, and when his rage reached a breaking point, he punched the wall's side, creating a fist-sized hole in it. As he collapsed onto his bed, his breathing was a little labored, and he simply gazed at the ceiling, letting his eyes turn slightly red and a few tears fall down his cheeks. He heard his door open and a small footstep approaching him as he reclined. The footsteps told him who it was already. He turned to see Mina standing there with a sheet of paper and a few crayons, obviously hoping Naruto would want to color with her. He sat up and said, "Hi Mina. Chan. You want to do some drawing?" But Mina gave him a sidelong glance and a small furrow appeared on her forehead. Then, shakily and with some assistance from Naruto, she climbed onto the bed, waddled over to him, put her hands to his cheek, and, to his surprise, started to wipe away the tears. She squealed, "Naru, no cry." Naruto smiled at her and held her in his lap, which caused her to giggle a little. As he placed the piece of paper on his bed and, to Mina's delight, took the blue crayon from her, he thought, "I wonder how much you understand Mina-chan." They then started drawing pictures on the paper. Minato and Kushina, who was still crying, tried to talk to him when they got home, but Naruto hurried out of the house and headed to Hiruzen's, where he would spend the evening and dinner because he couldn't bear to look at his parents at the moment. 1 month later, as he started to leave his room and head to the training field, where he would be meeting Itachi and Anko for some morning sparring, Naruto strapped his sword to the side of his hip. Since it was early in the morning and it was Saturday, Kushina and his siblings were still asleep, and the only person awake was Minato, who had already left for his office. To put it mildly, the month had been awkward. When Minato and Kushina attempted to talk to him, Naruto simply had nothing to say. Since everyone knew that Naruto and Kushina had a very close bond before the twins and Mito were born and that they were rarely seen apart, Kushina had made more attempts than Minato. She felt that she could never forgive what she had done to her oldest child, and she planned to somehow make amends. He heard faint footsteps behind him as he was ready to open the door, and when he turned around, he saw Mito standing there massaging her eyes. She looked up at him with interest and asked, "Oni-chan, where are you going?" He said simply, "I'm going to train with a few friends." A look of delight appeared on Mito's face. She looked at him with her large round blue eyes and gave him a puppy dog look, asking, "Let me go with you, please." As she gazed at him, Naruto felt himself shattering. Her lip trembled a little as she repeated, "Pleasey." Naruto sighed. She squealed a little, jumped up, and gave him a sloppy peck on the cheek before running upstairs. "You have 5 minutes to get dressed," he said. When Kushina woke up, Naruto went into the kitchen and left a note informing her that Mito was with him and that she would return by lunch. After a few minutes, Mito hurried down the stairs wearing her daytime attire and a small ponytail, and the two of them started walking. Mito took Naruto's hand as they were walking, causing him to raise an eyebrow, but he grinned as she kicked her feet and hummed a little song. They walked for about 20 minutes before they reached their training ground, where Anko and Itachi were already sparring. Despite her disappointment at missing her teammates' battle, the purple-haired girl vowed to train until she was on par with them and could support them. Mito appeared awestruck as she observed them fighting, and when Anko and Itachi halted their sparring, her presence was finally noticed. Anko grinned at Mito as they both went over. She patted Mito on the head, causing the younger girl to smile up at the older girl. "You brought a little munchkin with you today, huh, Naruto?" she asked. As she had done to Naruto before, she used her puppy dog eyes to ask, "That was so cool. Can you teach me how to do that snake move thingy?" Fortunately, Anko was immune to such a move. Mito pouted when she remarked, "Maybe when you're older, munchkin." He explained why she was with him today as Itachi and Anko gazed at him. They both gave him shoulder pats. He understood the situation and said, "Ria-chan does the same with me." Anko rolled her eyes. The three of them trained and sparred for the next few hours, and Mito watched them from a safe distance, her eyes wide and her smile broad. While sitting with Mito, the three older children sparred one-on-one and answered any questions she had about their moves or methods. Anko would point out small details to Mito, who was closely observing the older girl, during much of the Naruto vs Itachi sparring. When Mito asked if they could demonstrate one of their techniques for her during their brief breaks, they considered it and decided there was no harm in doing so. They concentrated on her kunai throwing because she hadn't yet unlocked her chakra. Anko assisted her with the speed she threw them at, while Itachi and Naruto assisted her with her aim. Naruto made sure the end was blunt and that he was always close to his younger sister because they were only wearing metal kunais. She eyed Naruto's blade in his right hand and said, "Oni-chan, can I see your sword please?" The request caused Naruto to raise an eyebrow, but he believed it was harmless. Mito approached him as he unsheathed his blade, her large, eager eyes examining it. Naruto swiftly covered her with his hand as she reached for the tip. He said, "No, Mito-chan. It's very sharp and you might cut yourself." Mito nodded, but it was clear that the message had not been fully received because she grabbed one of the kunai from the floor and picked it up at the sharp end while wearing an excited expression. She held her hand, let out a little cry and a little wail, and gasped a little. Next to him, Naruto dropped his blade and took Mito's hand while glaring at her. Though he spoke softly, he said, "Mito-chan, I told you, you need to be careful and not to pick any of them up without asking one of us first." "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." She sniffed and cried out. Anko approached her from behind and embraced her. With a sigh, Naruto smiled slightly at her. He took her hand in his own and carefully removed her other hand, which was covering the wound, saying, Here, let me heal it for you. The cut was only a straight line that began at the base of her thumb and ended at the beginning of the middle finger. It was neither very large nor deep. When his eyebrow furrowed in perplexity, Naruto's hand glowed green and proceeded to heal it. Itachi and Enko noticed the expression, glanced at Mito's wound, and then followed suit. As the wound gradually started to mend itself, Mito's cut gave off a faint red glow. While he was concentrating on the cut, Naruto's Shozenjutsu hand brushed over Mito's stomach. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed black markings appear on the portion of her stomach that was visible through her shirt. Mito. Chan, can you show me your tummy for a minute? He inquired. As they all chuckled, she said, you won't tickle me, will you? When Mito carefully lifted her top to reveal her stomach, Naruto smiled and said, no, I won't tickle you. Upon seeing a black spiral pattern with 8 points of 4 on top and 4 on the bottom of Naruto and the others' faces abruptly became serious and focused. Enko asked, staring at Naruto in confusion, is that a seal? Naruto nodded. Yeah, but it's very advanced, so advanced that it can only be my parents' work. I mean, the spiral is the symbol of the Uzumakis, so my parents must have put this on her. Itachi questioned as Naruto's chakra hand advanced. Why would they put a highly technical seal on a 5-year-old? A pair of enormous red eyes with black slits stared at him as his fingers touched the seal on his sister's stomach, but then everything turned black and he heard a loud roar. It ended as abruptly as it had begun, and Naruto collapsed onto his butt while staring at the seal with wide, startled eyes. Itachi questioned, what is it? Enko appeared interested as well, wondering what could have caused their friend to appear so startled and even a little frightened. Naruto said, Iya. And then he shook his head. I can't share what I witnessed with them. He thought, at least not here with Mito in front of us, as Mito gave him an inquisitive look. Now I understand. I understand why they ignored me. He thought angrily, and they did this to her, before he composed himself. After taking a deep breath, Naruto stood up again and turned to face Mito. Taking her hand in his again, he asked, is your hand better, Mito? Chan? And noticed that it was fully recovered. She put her hand in front of his mouth and said softly, it's better, thank you, kiss it better. After grinning and giving his younger sister a big kiss on the hand, Naruto gave her another kiss on the cheek, which made her laugh, and then he took her in his arms. Mito's eyes were bright as he said, come on Mito. Chan. It's about lunchtime and I kind of fancy some ramen. Ramen, she exclaimed as Anko and Itachi turned down his invitation and returned to their own houses, leaving the siblings to eat alone. After spending nearly an hour at Ichiraku's, they left 3 bowls from Mito and 10 from Naruto before heading home. As soon as Naruto and Mito entered the room, Kushina heard Mito giggling, and the 5-year-old immediately went to her mother and gave her a tight hug. Kushina attempted to follow her daughter's words as she said, Chan, Naruto Oni. Chan took me with him and his team to train and they were really good. They taught me how to improve my kunai skills, but then I got cut but Oni. Chan healed me and then he took me to get ramen. As Naruto entered without glancing at her and greeted his siblings, she remarked, that's very nice, sweetie. As he patted his brother's head, he said, hey Eiji, Chan. Eiji ate his sandwich and said, hi Oni. Chan. Then he turned to Mina, who was puffing out her cheeks and pouting at him. Wet down to her level, Naruto thought she looked cute. As Mina's little cheeks turned red and she kept pouting at him, he asked, Mina. Chan. Are you upset because I didn't take you with me this morning? He stared at her and said, next time I will take you with me. A few seconds later, her pout transformed into a broad smile as Naruto leaned forward and kissed the tip of her nose, causing her nose to wrinkle. As Naruto turned and gazed at her without displaying any emotion, Kushina called out, Naruto. I was about to make some lunch. I know you have had ramen already but maybe I coulda. Before Kushina could respond, he left the room, causing her to sigh pitifully and glance at the floor before she sat down. No thanks. I'm still full from lunch. I'm going to my room. As she heard Naruto's footsteps ascend the stairs, she muttered, Naru-chan, how far have I pushed you away from me? After 2 years as he left the Hokage building, a 13-year-old Naruto ran along the rooftops. He had just returned from a week-long mission away with a 3-formation team sent to deal with 2 bandit camps that were aligned and causing trouble north of Konoha. The mission was simple, and his co-workers were amiable enough with Naruto, not giving a damn that he was only a child, unlike some others. Quite a few times, some of the other chunin Naruto accompanied on missions would gripe about being stuck with a child, whether or not it was the Hokage's son, and fear Naruto would bring them down. However, Naruto quickly disproved their claims and demonstrated to them why he had turned into a chunin. After that, he received no more complaints. Itachi was rarely present because he was usually away on separate missions. He was also confined to the Uchiha compound because Fugaku wanted to make sure his beloved son did not spend too much time with other people or was preparing to join the Anbu forces. She had developed a strong interest in the torture and interrogation division, which was led by the sadist Ibiki Morino, so he did not see Anko as much as he would have liked. She was rapidly establishing herself and winning over the division head. Since they were his first teammates, they did occasionally go on missions, but not as frequently as he would have preferred. However, he was looking forward to the fact that the three of them were starting to make the decision to leave their current residences and move in together. Anko wanted some company and to be less alone, so the three of them had made mission after mission to save up enough money for a nice 3-bedroom apartment where they could live together. They were setting aside the money they had left over to help pay for a nice, respectable place for themselves. The majority of their funds were spent on new clothes, training gear, etc. Fugaku and a few other Uchiha clan members were forcing Itachi down a path he did not want, and Naruto felt suffocated by his parents, so both of them wanted their own space from their family. Before deciding on a location that the three of them created, they planned to search for a year. Minato and Kushina had made every effort to make amends with Naruto since the major altercation following the chunin exams 2 years prior, but the blonde boy simply showed no interest. He never wanted sympathy from them, and that's what they were doing. They were curious about Naruto's strength and how he gained it so quickly after watching him in the chunin exams. When they heard from individuals like Tsunade, Makoto, and Hiruzen that Naruto was a true prodigy and a genius of both natural talent and hard work, they were both astounded. Together with Itachi Uchiha, their son had been a lifetime genius and prodigy, and neither had even realized it. Both of them have since desired to assist Naruto in his training, but things have never worked out well. Every time Minato asked if he needed assistance with his fuinjutsu, Naruto would respond that he was good enough to handle things on his own. He never noticed the pitiful and apologetic expression Minato would give his estranged son. But Kushina was the worst. She had attempted to hold on to him and reunite with her baby boy ever since that day, but Naruto had always stepped back. Like Minato, she repeatedly attempted to assist him with kenjutsu but was turned down. Although she was disappointed that her son did not want her assistance, she later came to the realization that she most likely deserved it. Naruto felt disappointed by his parents, but he didn't want to be mean to them because he loves them as a child should. He would complete his journey to become a great shinobi without their assistance, or at least until he was prepared to start accepting it. His goal was to outperform his parents, but everyone has one. He would outperform them in either kenjutsu or fuinjutsu. Ka-san, 2-san, Naruto thought as he leapt over the rooftops, but he stopped when he noticed Yugo, Hana, and Hayate strolling through the streets below. He grinned as he leapt to the ground and landed beside Hana, who gave a startled yelp before swatting his arm. She growled and said, "Naruto, I told you to stop doing that." Naruto merely laughed and petted her 3 ninkin, who were yapping for his attention. As they licked his hand, he said, "Hey guys, I missed you too." Then he turned back to the trio. He asked, "So where you guys headed?" And Yugo replied, "To get some food down at the Akamichi barbecue place, Kushina. Sensei finished our training an hour ago, but we decided to do some light sparring for an hour." Naruto gave a nod. His mother's decision to join a genin team truly surprised him, but he suspected it was because his team's sensei, Makoto Uchiha, was rubbing it in her face by making her first genin team chunin in a single year or something that hadn't happened since the Sannin. After the three had been working together for roughly 6 months, Kushina hoped to prepare them for the chunin exams in that same time frame. She was determined not to let Makoto Uchiha surpass her. Yugo inquired, "How was the mission, Kushina? Sensei has been worried ever since you left. She kept looking in the direction of the gate every 5 minutes trying to sense if you had arrived back yet. She knows I am a big boy and that I can take care of myself. Besides, I had teammates with me." Hayate coughed into his hand as the other two nodded, saying, "True, but she still worries. I don't think she can help it since she is your mother." He said his goodbyes, leapt away, and made his way to the training grounds, saying, "Okay, well, I'll see you guys later. I got some training to catch up on." As he ran past each training ground, he observed the shinobi practicing their jutsu and training. He eventually arrived at a remote training area that Anko had shown him and that he immediately fell in love with. The Forest of Death, formerly known as Training Ground 44. He was astounded that he had not discovered this location earlier when Enko showed it to him approximately a year ago. Due to the presence of enormous animals and insects, as well as numerous natural hazards and traps, it was the most hazardous training ground. He, Enko, and Itachi visited it as frequently as they could since it was the ideal setting for training. He hurried up on top of the metal beams and pushed himself forward and onto one of the enormous trees as he approached the fences that surrounded the training area. When he felt a big object moving quickly and directly toward him, he leapt along the tree and branches. Naruto simply rolled his eyes before stopping and kicking his leg out with super strength packed behind it, avoiding a panic. His leg shot forward, connecting with a huge spider 4 times Naruto's size, propelling it 40 meters into the air and sending it flying far from him. Knowing that the spider was to blame for attacking him in the first place, he shrugged after thinking, I think I might have kicked it to the other side of the forest. When he noticed a tiny chakra signature close by and realized that its emotions were in distress and fear, he abruptly stopped and scowled as he was running across the treetops and making his way to his usual location. That's strange. Nobody else ought to be out here. Enko, Itachi, and I are the only ones who train here, and I am positive that neither of them would get into any trouble. Well, maybe Enko. He turned left and ran toward it at his maximum speed, avoiding the sharp edges and branches of the protruding trees, and soon landed next to a sizable patch of quicksand that measured roughly 10 meters in length and width. He initially scowled since he could not see anyone in the area, but he nevertheless detected a chakra signature and questioned whether he had been merely detecting a massive animal. He realized that whoever it was already drowning in the sand and would perish in a matter of seconds when he looked toward the center of the quicksand and noticed a tiny indent on its surface. Whatever it was, Naruto had to help it because it felt scared and powerless. Before slamming his 2 hands together, he made a few hand gestures. He yelled, "Wood style. Wooden pillar jutsu." As wood sprang up out of the ground and traveled toward the middle of the quicksand before leveling out and forming a temporary bridge. After sprinting across the tiny wooden bridge and channeling chakra into his arms to increase his strength, Naruto dove into the swift sand and wrapped his hands around the person who was sinking. He struggled against the swift sand with tremendous strength and managed to drag the person out. He landed on his butt after staggered back a bit. He inhaled deeply since he had to exert more force than he had anticipated against the quicksand, which many shinobi detested because there were so few escape routes. Whoever was in the quicksand was so tiny, in fact, that they might have burst if he had squeezed them any harder. He saw the person he had just saved when he looked down. But the person he saved wasn't even human. He noticed that the cat was so tiny, in fact, that he could probably place her atop his head. The little cat had black stripes all over its body and was entirely white. It had very small paws, nearly as small as a baby's hand. Its mouth had 2 pointed teeth sticking out. As the little cat opened its eyes and revealed large green eyes with a pupil that resembled a cat slit, he said, "Hey there, little guy. What are you doing in a big scary place like this?" After staring at him for a while, it gave a little meow and gave him a loving cheek lick, which made him chuckle. He patted its head and remarked, "Ha, that tickles, little fella." Naruto looked at the small cat in surprise as it said, "Thanks you, mister. I thought I was gonna die." As it bopped its head up and down, he asked, "You talk?" "Yuha, of course I talk." "Wells, that's pretty cool. I have never met a talking cat before. Talking toads and slugs, yes, but never a little cat." The little cat made what he assumed to be a pout and started pounding its tiny paws against him, so he assumed he had said something incorrectly. The little tiger shocked Naruto by revealing, "I'm not a cat, you big dummy. I'm a tiger. A white tiger from the White Tiger clan. And stop calling me fella, I'm a girl." Before extending his hand to her, he said, "Oh well, I am sorry about that." He said, "My name is Naruto. It's nice to meet you." The young tiger cub gave him a quick glance with her large green eyes before mimicking his movements and placing her paw on top of his hand. With Kiera still in his arms, Naruto nodded and got up, leaving the swift sand behind. "My name's Kiera, part of the White Tiger clan." In order to prevent her from falling back into the quicksand, he held her close while stroking her gorgeous coat of fur and picking sand particles off of it. "You know, I don't think I have ever heard of a White Tiger clan before," Naruto replied. "I am aware of the toads, snakes, slugs, monkeys and dogs, but white tigers are a new one on me." Kiera's tiny head turned to face him. "Ka-san doesn't like our kind going out in the world too much. She says long ago people killed the small tigers for sport and lots of us died. So Ka-san wants us to stay in our homeland since it's safe there and no one can hurt us." Naruto grinned. Your Ka-san sounds very smart and she sound like she cared a lot for her family. Kiera's head bobbed. She is, and she is very powerful. Ka-san is the chief of the White Tiger clan. A lot of the other tigers are a little scared of her since she is very strong. But I think Ka-san is a big softie. Yes, I wager, Naruto reflected. If you are not usually allowed to leave your home, then why are you in this forest? He inquired. Kiera smiled toothily at him. Ka-san says I'm a very curious child and I always want to see what's outside of home. But Ka-san likes it when I'm close by since I am Mama's only cub. He remarked, so she's very protective over you. Kiera nodded. Before she leapt from Naruto's embrace, she remarked, very so she might be a little mad that I am out here. You should meet her. I think she would like you since you saved me. He waved his arms and said, I don't think that would be a good idea. Kiera ignored him and put her paw on the ground in front of them. Naruto recognized the summoning seals as she did, and a black marking appeared on the ground. Naruto became extremely anxious when a huge cloud of smoke appeared a moment later. He had assumed the cloud would be small, perhaps a man's size or smaller, but it was huge, engulfing portions of the forest and reaching well above the treetops. In the hopes that Kiera's mother wouldn't use him as cat food, he thought, oh crap. Unconsciously, and with good reason, Naruto stepped back as the cloud started to fade. The creature that stood before him was the epitome of size. She loomed over the tops of the trees, and if he had to guess, he would say that she was at least a good head taller than his father's summoned Gamabunta. She was nearby, but not quite as large as the Kyuubi no Yoko he had seen when he was 5. Her coat had a sheen to it that he assumed came with age, but her fur was snow white and had long black stripes all over her body, just like Kiera's. Her paw claws were even larger than his Shisui's, and her eyes were also jade green. Her shoulders and tail muscles had this grayish silver armor to them, and on top of her head was what appeared to be a tiara of some sort with an emerald in the middle. The massive white tiger glanced around, bewildered. She exclaimed, "Where am I?" in a powerful yet refined voice. There was nobility in the tone of the voice. When Kiera's squeaky voice called out, Ka-san down here, he initially questioned whether the enormous tiger would even be able to reach her. However, it was clear that she did when her big head turned to face Kiera. She lowered her head to the floor and gazed at her daughter, saying sternly, "Kiera, what have I told you about leaving Mount Rainier? You know I don't like you leaving our home without me knowing her at all." Against her mother's massive nose, Kiera raised her hind legs, which would have reached Naruto's knee. She turned to face Naruto, whose eyes widened slightly as the white tiger chief's huge eyes approached and narrowed. "But Ka-san, it's so boring at home. And I met a new friend. See?" she said. The area began to vibrate as a deep growl escaped her throat, and Naruto felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. As the mother tiger reached its full height, she asked, "Did this person hurt you, my little cub?" Naruto wondered if anyone else in the village could see the enormous tiger because he didn't think anyone could ever miss her. Naruto swallowed and prepared to defend himself if he could, but Kiera jumped in front of him and pouted as she turned to face her mother. "Ka-san, please don't hurt him. He saved me. I might have died if he had not arrived." When her daughter spoke, the great tiger clearly looked a little put back, but then her eyes narrowed once more and she looked down at Kiera's. She said, "Start explaining, daughter," but it sounded more like an order. Kiera then started to describe what had happened, how she was drowning in quicksand after falling into it while chasing a butterfly, and how Naruto came to rescue her before the sand could swallow her whole. Before the mother tiger's enormous nose touched Kiera's body, Naruto stood aside and chastised her young cub for her stupid behavior. As Kiera stood on her hind legs once more and comfortingly licked her mother's nose, she whispered, "I thought I might have lost you." Naruto grinned. She is merely a mother who is concerned about her child. The enormous tiger turned to face Naruto before rising to her full height once more, causing Naruto to swallow. The powerful white tiger chief boss stared down at Naruto with her big green eyes staring directly into his, and for a moment no one said anything. There was silence for a moment before she spoke. "Saving my daughter as you did have put you in a favorable light, and your actions have gained my thanks, young man. Few would dare to risk saving another from death, less likely counting we are of different species. For saving my daughter, you have my thanks. I am Shiba, chief of the White Tiger clan of Mount Rainier." Naruto bowed to the enormous white tiger leader, knowing that he should be courteous in this circumstance. In response to Shiba's nod, he said, "I am Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. It's nice to meet you. You will have to forgive my earlier rudeness to you, young cub. My kind have had bad experiences with humanity, so we tend to avoid interaction with them. You are the first human I have spoken in many decades. Kiera showed her mother her clean fur and said, "He is really nice, Ka-san. He cleaned me and got rid of the sand. It was no problem at all, Shiba. Sama. I was just glad that I could help and save your daughter when I did. If not, then I dread to think what might have happened." Kiera was trying to get Shiba's attention by waving her paws in the air as Shiba nodded her head and started to speak. As Naruto laughed at the small cub, Shiba rolled her eyes but grinned broadly, flashing her large, sharp teeth. Ka-san, we should reward him. I know how we can reward him. It is my best idea I have ever had. What is your idea, young one? With a broad smile, Kiera patted over to Naruto and purred as she rubbed her head against his leg before responding. Shiba and Naruto both gave her a startled look as she said, "Let him become our summoner and sign the White Tiger contract." Despite being ecstatic on the inside, Naruto was at a loss for words. Ever since he witnessed Anko use her snake summons during the chunin exams, he had a persistent desire to possess one. In the meantime, Shiba squinted as she gazed at Kiera and her daughter. "Kiera, might I remind you we have never had a summoner before. Why should we start now?" Kiera scowled. As Naruto nodded his head rapidly, she said, "But Ka-san, this could be a good way to get back into this world. Plus Naruto would be a good summoner, right?" Standing erect, Shiba gazed down at Naruto, her green eyes piercing his, as though she were looking into his soul to determine whether he was deserving of being their first summoner. "What would you do if we gave you permission to sign our contract? Would you use us simply for our power? To gain respect and make people fear you?" Shiba asked in a test-like manner. Naruto shook his head hastily. He said, while Shiba and Kiera listened, "No, that would not be the reason. If I got the chance to sign your contract, then I would be eternally grateful. With your power I would use it to help protect my home, my village, my friends and my family. I would use your power to fight the evil and the darkness of this world and keep it at bay while keeping everything I hold dear safe and protected. That is what I would do if you allowed me to sign your contract." Shiba remained silent, gazing down at Naruto while she listened and mentally processed what he had said. Kiera, who was next to Naruto, was smiling at him and rubbing her body against his leg while purring joyfully, demonstrating her agreement with what he had just said. After a moment, Shiba glanced down at Kiera and gave her a slight nod, causing the tiny cub to bounce with joy. She then put her paw on the ground and let out another poof, albeit a small one. A huge scroll, roughly the size of the one Jiraiya carried for the toads on his back, emerged from the smoke. It was gray, with silver tiger heads on either end and the kanji characters for White Tiger inscribed on the side. Shiba said to Naruto, "Open it up." Naruto nodded quickly and opened it, once more demonstrating that they had never had any summoners before. He opened the scroll to reveal long, empty columns. "Cool," he thought as he dropped to his knees and examined the scroll while Shiba and Kiera sat next to him. He looked up at the tiger boss and asked, "How do I do this?" "Bite your finger and write your name in one of the columns with your blood. Once your name has been applied to the scroll, the contract will be complete." Before biting into the skin with his right thumb, he thought, "Sounds easy enough." As soon as he noticed a small amount of blood dripping from the wounds, he started writing his name on the scroll. He removed his hand after a short while and turned to face the scroll, which now bore his name in the first column. As the name briefly glowed before turning black and becoming permanently a part of the scroll, Shiba remarked, "And that's it." With a broad smile on his face, Naruto nodded quickly as she warned, "You are now officially the first summoner of the White Tiger summons. Don't disappoint us." Shiba glanced at Kiera as she swiftly explained the hand signals for the summoning jutsu and Naruto became acquainted with the set. "Kiera, since this was your idea, you will be the boy's familiar." With a joyful nod, Kiera leapt to her feet and climbed on Naruto, sitting comfortably on his head as he looked up at her with amusement. Shiba coughed to draw their focus back to herself. Her little cub nodded at her mother before Shiba vanished in a huge puff of smoke, leaving behind a very content Naruto and Kiera as they started to get to know one another a little better. "If that will be all, then I shall return home. I want you home before sunset, Kiera," she said. Household of Namikaze. As Kushina swept the floor with her broom, she continued to gaze at her home's front door, wondering when her oldest would enter. Since the big revelation that they had been pushing their oldest away without realizing it, Kushina had attempted to win her eldest back to them, but it was turning out to be more difficult than either of them had anticipated, and her heart was breaking in the back. "However, it's nothing more than I deserve. We cannot expect to be forgiven so quickly for what we did. He suffered for 5 years as a result of our foolishness," she thought. She hardly ever saw him during mealtimes because he was either with Anko, at the Sarutobi Manor, or at the Senju compound with Tsunade. Mina finished sweeping, and then she and Eiji came down the stairs. Mina squealed in mock horror as Eiji chased her with a pillow. She was aware that Mito was currently spending a girly afternoon with Inora's daughter Ino at the Yamanaka residence. After putting the broom away and laughing at the antics of her two kids, Kushina proceeded to one of the hallway cabinets. She started to quickly organize it by looking through it, but she noticed 4 photo albums at the back. She was staring at the one at the bottom, even though the other 3 were clean and clearly had been used recently. To get rid of some of the dust on top of it, she took it out and blew on it. With a gray cover and gold leaf patterns all around, it was a bit smaller than the other 3 but still looked very elegant. She read the words on the front and was taken aback by what she saw. The baby book of Naruto, she thought to herself. I forgot all about this, and then she got up, walked into the living room, and sat on the biggest sofa. She put the photo book on her lap and raised her legs on the couch. Her eyes started to well up with tears as soon as she turned the first page. The first image was an ultrasound taken around 6 months into her first pregnancy, while she was still carrying Naruto. Other than being slightly ripped around the edges, the picture was fine. The picture underneath it showed Kushina at 8 months, with Minato cradling her in her belly as though she were attempting to hold their firstborn. Kushina reflected, we look so young in this picture. When they had Naruto, she and Minato had been very young. When Naruto came into the world, they had just turned 23 and were hardly married. They didn't care, though, because as soon as they learned they were expecting a boy, they fell in love. The following image showed Naruto at the age of just 1 hour, snuggled into Kushina's chest while she kissed the top of his head and carried him in her arms in a delicate yet secure manner. From the smile she was giving in the photo, it appeared that his little mop of blonde hair on his head tickled her nose. She noticed Mina and Eiji examining the book as she gazed at the picture and felt 2 tiny weights appear next to her. As Mina traced one of the pictures with her little finger, Eiji questioned, what's this Ka-chan? She pointed to the photo she had just been looking at and said, this is your big brother's baby book from when he was little. Mina's nose wrinkled. Kushina laughed as she said sweetly, he looks like a knee. Mina shook her head as if to indicate that she didn't, but she did say, he was only just born when this was taken, sweetheart, and you looked like that when you were born as well. Kushina forgot about the pictures in the book as she turned the pages, and it brought back a lot of memories. For 3 years, it was just Kushina and Naruto all day long after Minato took over as Hokage when Naruto was 2 years old. These were enjoyable, cozy, and loving days. She picked him up and comforted him after he fell. She healed him when he was injured. She would lie beside him during his naps when he had a bad dream. She came across a photo of her and Naruto in a park, with Kushina pushing Naruto on the swing and grinning broadly. The 2 next to it showed Minato holding Naruto on his shoulder and Hiruzen reading Naruto a bedtime story. She could not help but notice how much her eldest was loved and cared for by those around them. Eiji and Mito were captivated by their big brother's diminutive appearance next to her. It seemed strange to them to see Naruto at their age and younger because he had always been their big, strong older brother. She then glanced down at a picture that she knew was of Naruto's 5th birthday, in which she was standing next to him, heavily pregnant, with her arms around his shoulders. Minato was standing next to her, and behind them were Kakashi, Tsunade, Jiraiya, Hiruzen, Kurenai, and Shizune. She turned the page with a smile on her face but scowled when she saw that it was blank. That's strange, she thought before beginning to skim the pages, and the more she read, the more agitated she became. She came to the conclusion that it was empty. She realized, we never got back to it. We simply stopped adding pictures to this page after the twins were born, and Naruto 13 is now 13. We don't have anything to record the 7 years of memories. She realized that she had nothing to honor Naruto's final years. At 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, or 12, nothing. Nothing existed to record his admission to the academy, graduation, first mission, or application for the chunin exam. And who assisted him in getting his first kill? Where had I gone? Unaware of it, she shed more tears, which caused tiny, dark splotches to appear on the picture book. A moment later, as Eiji and Mina stared at her bewildered, a tiny hand was placed on her hands. As Mina embraced her mother, Eiji looked up at his mother with concern and asked, Ka-chan, what's wrong? She wiped away the tears quickly before laughing it off because she didn't want her son and daughter to see her cry. It's nothing, Ka-chan's just being a little silly, that's all. The front door opened and closed before anyone could say anything. Naruto said as he made his way to the stairs, I'm home. After putting the book down, Kushina hurried to the hallway and noticed her son removing his sandals. He turned to face her and gave her a simple nod before making his way to the stairs. Eiji and Mina charged at him, and as Mina nuzzled him, they embraced him around the waist. Naruto patted Mina's head and she said, "Oni-chan, I missed you." Eiji looked up at Naruto, who nodded down at him. "Ni-san, do you think you can help me with my kunai throwing again? I still can't get the bullseye." "Sure, go out back and I will be there in a moment." Before he jogged out into the backyard, Eiji gave him a smile. When Naruto picked her up, Mina instantly nodded her head, grinning broadly, and giggled. "You want to come watch Mina-chan?" he asked. Naruto hurriedly put his sandals back on and headed for the backyard. When he passed Kushina, he noticed the shocked expression on her face and the way she gazed at him, which slightly broke his heart. He recalled Yugo's statement that Kushina was concerned about him and wanted him to be okay. He had previously witnessed Shiba's behavior toward Kiera and her joy upon realizing she was safe and unharmed. He did not turn around, but he stopped. Kushina woke up and turned to face him as he said, "The mission was fine. There were no problems and I am unharmed. Everyone made it back and I should be home for a few days." He then turned to leave, and as he did, she sniffed and a smile came to her face. "There's still a chance for me to bring my baby back. Perhaps simply allowing Naruto his space would be enough to mend the rift between Naruto and Kushina and Minato. I just have to be patient and let him come to me and to be there for him when he needs it," Kushina thought. She began dinner while wiping her eyes and keeping an eye on her 3 kids through the kitchen window. While Mina was eating her toast and making a mess of it, with peanut butter all over her face and cheeks, Naruto ate his cereal steadily and observed Mito and Eiji arguing. Minato had already left for work, and Kushina was in the kitchen preparing her own breakfast. The twins were fighting over who would eat the last piece of toast on a Saturday. Before Naruto picked up a spoon and gave them both a solid whack on the top of their heads, they were both in a headlock. "OWWWW Ni-chan." They both groaned, nursing their heads and pouting at Naruto, who merely gave them a funny look. "If you didn't fight then I would not have to knock some sense into you." "Yeah, no fighting," Mina exclaimed as Naruto rubbed the top of Mito's hair, which had grown longer now that she was 5, and Mito and Eiji scowled at their younger sister. Her hair, which was still a vivid red like Kushina's, fell down and ended just past her shoulders. Mina smiled toothily at him as Kushina appeared next to her and wiped her youngest child's face, causing Mina to wriggle in her seat. "Messy girl, aren't you, Mina-chan?" he asked. He leaned over and bit into Mina's toast while she wasn't looking. With a disgruntled expression on her face, Mina caught him as he swallowed and pouted before beginning to tap Naruto's cheek with her tiny fingers. She said, "No, take my toast," while Naruto chuckled. As she and Eiji shared the last piece of toast, Mito questioned, "Ka-chan, where is 2-san?" As Naruto ate his breakfast, she said, "He is at the office. He has a meeting with the elders again," which caused him to frown a little. Over the past few weeks, Hiruzen and his father have met with the elders numerous times, which piqued his interest in what was happening. They had never met so frequently and kept them so secret since the beginning. He knew a little about the 2 elders, Kaharu and Homura, because they were friends and teammates of his Jiji, but he knew very little about the other elder. On the few occasions he saw him, the man, who went by the name Danzo, simply exuded a spooky, icy vibe. He was analyzing and researching the value of everything he looked at. He was warned to avoid him by his parents when he was a young child. When Naruto began receiving instruction from Tsunade, Shizune, and Hiruzen, they all told him the same thing, even though Naruto thought they were being goofy. It was only at that point that Naruto started to take that seriously and avoided the man. Furthermore, he sensed that something strange was happening with Itachi and his family. Recently, he hasn't seen Mikoto very often, and when he did, she had a jittery appearance, as if she were afraid of something. He attempted to ask Itachi, but he would never respond and would instead steer the conversation in a different direction. Just as Kushina had sat down to eat her own breakfast, he finished his breakfast, shook his head, and left the thought for another time. He then got up, cleaned his plate, and left the room. Since today was a significant day for him, Itachi, and Anko, he didn't have time to consider that. They were moving into their apartment that day. She and Itachi were promoted to Special Jonin after working extremely hard for the past year. Given their impeccable records and growing strength, they would have made Jonin, but the council unanimously decided that, similar to the Konoha Academy, which raised the admission age from 6 to 8, they did the same for Anbu and Jonin. Although Anko wasn't quite ready, they knew that within the year she would work herself into the ground and attempt to catch up to them. Itachi and Naruto didn't mind that she was now 14 because it meant they would only have to wait another year. Naruto paused at a small cabinet and examined the framed picture that was resting on it as he made his way to the stairs to start packing. The image showed Mito and Eiji putting their arms around each other's shoulders on their first day of the academy. Less than a month has passed since they joined, and they are loving every second of it so far. Mito and Eiji seem to enjoy their new, young teacher, Iruka Amino, a chunin with a strong record, although they noted that he had a tendency to spend a lot of time giving lectures. According to the twins' account of their day, children from numerous other clans were starting school at the academy. The heirs of the Yamanaka, Akamichi, Nara, Hyuga, and Aburame had entered, as had Itachi and Hana's younger brothers, Sasuke and Kiba. While Mito was with her best friend Ino Yamanaka, Eiji spent the majority of his days with his friend Kiba in Izuka. All the other children were civilians. Before heading back upstairs to start packing, he reflected, Itachi, Anko, Hana, Yugo, Hayate, and I had entered the academy not that long ago. Like Itachi, he had not informed his family that he was planning to move out today, mostly because they both knew that they would try their hardest to keep them from leaving the nest if they told them early. But Naruto was secretly aware of his greatest challenge: Kushina and Mina. He knew that Kushina would object and try to keep him at home, even though Minato might respect his choice and give him the space he needed. The idea of one of her children leaving the nest at the age of 13 would undoubtedly make her feel strongly, and she would do everything in her power to keep him within her control. When he was at home, Mina was by his side all the time. Whether it was reading and drawing with him, sitting next to him during mealtimes, or sneaking into his bed at night when she had a bad dream or simply wanted to be warm and cozy with her big brother, she never left his side. That was what he wanted, but he wasn't anticipating it. He wanted his own space with his friends, who were like a second family to him, even though he loved his family. He shook his head, pushed his door open, and started to consider his options. He took several scrolls out of his desk drawer and spread them out on the bed, leaving each one completely open so he could stuff specific scrolls with the information he needed. Naruto worked in his room for 30 minutes, folding his clothes neatly on top of one scroll, sealing it, and setting it aside. Next, he had copies of all his books and jutsu scrolls from his parents' library. Since Hiruzen was pleased to teach him a few ninjutsu techniques because he was known as the professor for his proficiency in the art, he had only added a few in the previous 3 years. He stopped on one book in particular as he started to put them away. He discovered the book in the back of his parents' library, and since it was clearly dusty and neither of them had read it much, Naruto took it and never really returned it. Primarily because of what he discovered inside a forgotten relative he had no idea he had. Rewind. So it's some kind of old bingo book? Naruto asked, examining the book as Hiruzen sat beside him, filling 2 tiny cups with tea. Naruto accepted one from him, thanked him, and took a tiny sip. The book caught Hiruzen's attention. It looks like it. I have not seen one of these for a long time, he said. This I believe was one of the first bingo books to have ever been distributed. Here I thought they were all gone. Naruto had to acknowledge that this bingo book piqued his interest a bit. It must have existed back when Hiruzen was young and his parents were young if it was indeed one of the first types of bingo books ever created. After he opened it and started reading the book, he was soon absorbed by the shinobi that were within. The Naidame Mizukage and a member of the Hizuka clan, S-ranked shinobi. The Naidame Tsuchikage Mew of the Dust Style, S-ranked shinobi. He noticed the words, deceased, next to both names. Ah yes, those two in particular were known for their rivalry. They ended up battling one another in a grand battle and ended up killing one another. Onoki became the Tsuchikage just after Emu's death. When Naruto saw Onoki, the Sandame Tsuchikage, and his younger self, he nodded, turned the page, and nearly burst out laughing. Naruto estimated that he was in his late 30s at the time the photo was taken, and his nose was even larger than it is now. Hiruzen thought the same thing when he saw the picture and laughed quietly. Naruto noticed the S-ranked symbol next to his name, but it also indicated that Onoki was on the verge of being SS class. Naruto nearly burst out laughing as he turned the page and saw a photo of Hiruzen, who appeared to be in his mid-30s. His face was now wrinkled, and his hair was no longer gray. Naruto found it strange to see his childhood Jiji. Naruto nearly choked on his tea when he saw the SS class symbol next to Hiruzen's old photo. Hiruzen laughed when he saw his old photo and started to wonder where the time had gone. Jiji, you were an SS class shinobi? He asked. SS class was practically unheard of, but he was aware that his Jiji was powerful. As Naruto was aware, he remarked, back in my youth I was thought I have slowed it down now that I am older. Though I can still give most a good beating if they push me enough. Even in his early 60s, He could easily compete with fighters like Jiraiya and Tsunade. Naruto turned the page and halted at the next person he saw as Hiruzen turned away to sip his tea. As he read the first name, his forehead furrowed in perplexity. "Gigi, do you know who this person is?" asked he. He asked, "What is their name, Naruto-kun?" while sipping his tea. Naruto, who was standing next to him, inhaled deeply as he mentally recited the name before uttering it. Genryusai Uzumaki. Naruto turned to face Hiruzen and saw that he had just frozen and that his cup, which was in contact with his lips, was motionless. Naruto started to question whether he had said something incorrectly. Hiruzen sat silently for a moment before taking the book from Naruto and carefully turning to the page. He noticed that Hiruzen was examining it carefully before a tiny smile spread across his face. Genryusai Uzumaki. Now there is a name and face I had not seen or heard of in a long time. Naruto saw Hiruzen nod his head and asked, "You know him, Gigi?" Turning to face Naruto, he handed the book back and gave him a questioning glance. "In a manner of speaking, I did. He is someone who battled in the past as well as someone that I have the utmost respect for. As you can tell from the name, he was part of the Uzumaki clan as well as its clan head before it fell. This is the first time you have ever heard of that name, isn't it?" he said with a nod. As Hiruzen nodded his head, Naruto questioned, "Should I know him?" "Yes, though I am not surprised you do not know of him. Your mother rarely speaks about him to anyone, even to your father." He said, "My mom? So this guy was someone special to my mom then?" As Hiruzen nodded once more. "Yes, Naruto. Genryusai Uzumaki was the clan head of the Uzumaki clan back when your mother was a girl. But more importantly, he is your maternal grandfather Naruto. Your mother's father." Naruto looked back down at the photo and exclaimed, "My grandfather?" The man was bald on top, with black hair on the sides of his head. There was a tuft of hair in a topknot at the back of his head. He had a long, thick black mustache and thick black eyebrows. However, two long scars that interlaced with one another to form an X-shaped scar were the most obvious feature on his forehead. Naruto gave Hiruzen a perplexed look. Before he spoke, Hiruzen's face took on a dejected expression. "Why have I never heard of him before today?" he asked. "Your mother probably should be the one to tell you, but since she has kept it from you and your siblings, then perhaps it's okay for me to tell you about him now that you know about him. Your mother told you when you were younger that she came to Konoha when she was a young girl. Her father Genryusai was against her going to Konoha since he wanted her to stay in Whirlpool so she would be safe, secure, and so he could watch over her. But your mother has always been an adventurous one and she wanted to go to Konoha. In the last few months of her staying in Whirlpool, she and your grandfather argued a lot, and when Kushina left for Konoha, their relationship became very strained to the point where she told him that she hated the fact that she was his daughter and they stopped speaking altogether. Your grandfather was a very stern and strict man who led his life by certain principles, and it clashed a lot of times since your mother is very free-spirited." With a nod, Naruto encouraged him to go on. "Months later, the siege and destruction of Whirlpool occurred and your grandfather died protecting it. Your mother was heartbroken because she never had the chance to make peace with him. She only told very few people about him, and I guess thinking about it hurt a lot, so she just kept it quiet. I guess she thought it was better not to tell you and your siblings since she felt ashamed at what her last conversation with her father was." After listening carefully, Naruto spent the next 30 minutes inquiring about his grandfather. His mother wanted to know about his grandfather, but he could understand why she never mentioned him. Final flashback: Naruto swiftly sealed the ancient bingo book into one of the scrolls while examining it. To Naruto's surprise, Hiruzen had informed him that his grandfather was among the strongest and most powerful individuals he had ever encountered, to the extent that their battles with Genryusai would always end in a stalemate. His maternal grandfather was just as strong and skilled as his Gigi, who was an SS-class shinobi in his prime. Genryusai was a swordsman, which is likely what inspired Kushina to become a skilled kenjutsu practitioner and to honor her father. He was notorious for using his blade in conjunction with fire chakra to create massive pillars and fire explosions on the battlefield. Naruto discovered that his grandfather's blade was named Ryujin Jaka, which made people fearful of dying. However, as far as he was aware, the remains of his grandfather and his blade were lost in the debris and ruins of Uzushiobakure. "I wish I could have met him. To have been able to take 2,000 invading shinobi down with you, one of which was a strong Jinchuriki, was nothing short of incredible." He put the current storage seal away and started packing away his shinobi tools, such as ninja wire, shuriken, and kunai, after putting those thoughts out of his head for the time being. When he heard his door open, however, he saw Mito standing there. "Ni-chan, can you?" she began, but stopped when she noticed how empty Naruto's room had become. with his closet open and clothes missing, and all of his bookshelves empty. With a puzzled expression on her face, she asked Naruto, "What are you doing?" as she tried to understand him. After a brief pause, Naruto decided it would be best to respond honestly. "I'm moving out, Mito-chan. I'm not going to live here anymore." Mito gave him a slightly perplexed look as soon as he said those words, and Naruto saw her face look sad and heartbroken as she processed what he had just said. Naruto continued to seal things away while turning away. Before doing what Naruto knew she would do, she gave a small sniff. "Ka-chan." Mito's cry reverberated throughout the house, and Naruto heard footsteps rushing up the stairs and Kushina's chakra signature approaching them. He became alarmed and perplexed. In the doorway, Kushina materialized and descended to Mito's level. As Mito sniffled and gestured toward Naruto, she said, "Sweetheart, what's wrong? Why are you shouting?" Similar to what Mito had observed moments before, Kushina turned to face Naruto before noticing how empty the room was. Her gaze wandered around the room before settling on Naruto, and she appeared perplexed. Though she seemed to already know the answer, she asked, "What's going on? Why is your room completely bare and why are you sealing stuff away into that storage scroll?" Naruto repeated, "I'm moving out," and he caught a glimpse of Kushina's eyes go white as she stared at him in disbelief. With a slightly elevated voice, she said, But you can't move out," which caused Mito to step back from her mother. "You are 13, you are not old enough to be moving out." "Wrong," he said, tapping his Konoha headband without raising his eyes from his storage scroll. "The moment I became a shinobi and put this headband on, I became an adult. Old enough to kill, old enough to move out." Kushina stared at him, unable to find the right words to say. She tried to appear intimidating as she asked, "Then where are you going to go? Do you already have a place in store?" But Naruto ignored her. "I have a 3-bedroom apartment with Itachi and Anko. We have been saving and putting bits of our mission money to the side for the last 2 years and we finally have enough. We already made the deposit. Anko is probably already there while Itachi will be doing the same thing as I am right now." He closed the last scroll and tucked it away in a backpack he slung over his shoulder after looking down at his bed and realizing everything he wanted to take was packed. He approached Mito, knelt down, and planted a kiss on his head. Mito nodded, although he was still a little teary. "You can come and see me whenever you want, okay?" he said. She wrapped her arms around his neck and held them there for a few seconds before they released their grip. He got up and turned to face Kushina, who was having trouble thinking of something to say. Before heading downstairs, he gave his mother a quick kiss on the cheek, causing her to gasp a little. "I will come by and visit when I can," he said. Mina and Eiji were standing at the bottom of the stairs, wondering what all the commotion upstairs was about, so he quickly explained what he was doing as he descended the stairs. Tears filled her eyes as her mind started to work, and she pushed them away from her spot and hurried down the stairs. Naruto felt 2 arms encircle his shoulder and tightly grasp him as he bid farewell to a tearful Eiji and Mina. Kushina's voice was rough but firm as he stated, "You are not going anywhere. This is your home. This is where you belong." She pushed a tiny flow of chakra in her wedding ring, which contained a tiny Hiroshin seal, while she was holding onto her son. After taking a deep breath, Naruto attempted to break free of her hold, but her hold only grew stronger. There was nothing else he could do, so he used the Kawarin with Eiji, who materialized in Kushina's grasp. Naruto hurried over to the door and was ready to open it, but he stopped when he heard his father's voice and mentally cursed. Minato asked, "Kushina, what's wrong? Why did you call me here?" as he had just appeared next to his wife and noticed her pained and tearful expression. Sniffling, Kushina turned to face Naruto. As Mina, Eiji, and Mito stood to the side, observing their parents and older brother, she exclaimed, "Naruto's moving out. I'm trying to stop him, but I need you to help convince him. Help me get him to stay, Minato." With a startled expression, Minato turned to face Naruto, who was facing away from him and holding the door handle. Minato said softly, "Naruto," and stepped forward. "It does not have to be like this. We can figure something out. If it's space you want, then we can find a way around it. We don't want you to leave our home. Not yet, at least. Your mother and Ia. We are sorry. Sorry for the loneliness we put on you for 5 years, but as you can see, we are not quite ready to let you go yet." Kushina referred to him by his former nickname, "Please Naru-chan," saying, "Please stay with us. Stay with me." She said this in a whisper, but Minato and Naruto could hear her. After standing silently for a minute, Naruto slowly turned his head so that his left eye was visible. "I'm not the little boy that needs to coddled anymore, and I have been taught how to look after myself since the day after the fox attack. Neither of you helped, so I learned on my own or from those that were willing to help me. Now I want to branch out on my own and become my own person with my own life away from home," he said with a narrowed eye. Minato and Kushina flinched as he said, "You owe me that much." As they rehearsed it in their minds, neither Minato nor Kushina initially responded. Although Kushina was still adamant that he remain with them, Minato's thoughts had changed. Perhaps they should allow him to leave the nest if his first son and oldest child so desired. He needed time away from his family, especially Minato and Kushina, and he needed his own space. Perhaps allowing Naruto his own space will help them re-establish their relationship with their son. Minato let out a sigh and stepped back. He said, "I won't stop you if you want to go, but know that you are always welcome to come home. You will always have a home in this house," as Kushina stared at him in disbelief. Naruto then gave him a small nod and a tiny smile that seemed to say, "Thank you." Kushina said, "No, this is his home. I don't want him leaving us just yet," but Naruto stopped her before she could approach him by putting his arms around his wife. Minato said, "Let him go, Kushina. He's ready," but when he heard his wife sobbing, his heart broke. When Naruto eventually pushed the handle down and left, Minato watched as he carefully closed the door behind him. As her eldest left the house at the age of 13, Kushina let out a little cry, wriggled out of Minato's grasp, and ran upstairs and into their bedroom, shutting the door behind her. Minato went upstairs to console his wife before he had to leave to return to his meeting, while Mito and Eiji went back into the kitchen to wipe their noses. He did this without noticing his youngest child run to the door and disappear. Alongside Naruto, the door creaked open, and Naruto took a deep breath before stepping out the door and moving forward, away from the home where he was raised. Though he thought Kushina had followed him, he sighed when he felt two smaller arms encircle his waist. He looked down and saw Mina clutching him while tears streamed down her cheeks. She hiccuped, "Don't go. I don't want you to go away." When Naruto saw the condition she was in now, he was heartbroken and felt guilty. He lowered himself to her level, gave her a tight hug, and felt her press her face against the bend of his neck. He said, "Mina-chan, it's time for me to go out on my own, but I will still be here. I will see you every day if you want to, and we will still have dinners together. But I have a life away from home now." But Mina didn't seem to be getting any better as she clung to him for dear life. He tilted her head up so she could see him. "Hey Mina-chan," he said, "how about I take you with me to where I will be living with Itachi and Anko? That way you know where I am and how to get to me. Would you like that?" Mina hiccuped, and Naruto nodded softly while wiping the tears from her eyes. Mina leapt onto his back as he backed her, and he said, "Okay, come on then, sweetie," before he resumed his stride. Mina laid her head on his shoulder and nestled into his back. The Konoha villagers saw the two walking together and grinned, while the women were in awe of the brother and sister pair. They assumed Naruto was trying to lift Mina's spirits because they could tell by her expression that she had been crying. As Naruto spoke softly to his younger sister, who was content to cuddle up to her brother, he noticed that Itachi was standing across from them, with little Ria perched on his back, just like Mina. Naruto nodded to the Uchiha and materialized beside Itachi. He nodded and asked, "You too, huh? How did they take it?" "My mother was what I expected. She was shocked, but she understood the need for space, though she did cry and hug me for 5 minutes asking where her baby went. My father was not happy and told me I was forbidden from leaving. As you can see, I did not listen and left. Sasuke was upset, but I told him I would still see him most days, though Ria clung to me. Yeah, same here. The twins took it well, as did my 2.san, though Ka.san was not happy and wanted me to stay home. Mina clung to me as soon as I stepped outside." Itachi nodded, and as their sister talked to them on their backs, they walked together in silence. They finally arrived at their new residence after 5 minutes. It was a 7-story apartment complex with a respectable appearance. The building had a creamy color and a light red wooden roof. Since some of the apartment buildings in the Konoha tended to be a little worn out, this one looked relatively new and was one of the better maintained. His former residence was only 15 minutes away. The two boys went inside and ascended every set of stairs until they reached the uppermost floor. They proceeded down the hallways and used their news key to open the final door at the end. Upon entering, they noticed Anko eating a late breakfast while seated on a couch they had purchased together. When she saw them, she turned to smile. As she grabbed Mina and Ria and spun them around, she said joyfully, "Yo, it's about time you got here. And you brought the little munchkins too." The two girls laughed and forgot their earlier sadness as the older girl with the purple hair lifted their spirits. When Itachi and Naruto shook their heads, she pouted mockingly and asked, "Can we keep them? As nice as that would be, I don't think our parents could handle another child leaving the home." Anko grimaced. That bad, huh? Both of them replied, pretty much, before heading to their new rooms to store their belongings. Naruto moved to the room across from Anko's and entered a space that was almost twice as large as his previous room, with a double bed in the center. The room's wall was painted dark blue, and the bed had pillows and covers that were dark gray. Along with a bedside table on the right and a sizable wardrobe on the left, there was a window on the right side of the bed and two. Grinning at his new residence, Naruto started packing his belongings. He was halfway through packing his clothes in the closet when Mina entered and began to survey his new space. Do you like it? He inquired, observing her narrow her eyes as she surveyed the space, seemingly deciding whether it was a good room or, more crucially, whether she could enter it covertly. She said, before sprinting to her bed, jumping on it, and rolling around on the covers. As she messed up his bed linens, Naruto arched an eyebrow at her. In addition to making Mina jump a little as Naruto held her in his lap and tickled her stomach, he grinned and leapt onto the bed. He tickled his younger sister for a minute, causing tears of laughter to fall down her cheeks as she pleaded for forgiveness. He noticed her pout before it turned into a smile when he stopped. Kissing the top of her head, he said, I love you, Mina-chan. He received a sloppy kiss on the cheek and a broad smile in return. Love you to Ni-san, Mina exclaimed as the two sat there for a short while, enjoying each other's company and the little girl's laughter as Naruto played with Mina's longer hair. A few minutes later, Ria was holding Itachi's hand as he emerged in the doorway. We need to go pick up the coffee tables and the wardrobe for Anko. She did sucker us into getting it for her, he said with a nod. As the little redhead nodded and hurried out of the room with Ria, he said, Mina-chan, Itachi and I just need to go make a few errands. Stay in the apartment and play with Ria-chan. We won't be very long. After noticing Ria and Mina playing with Anko, Naruto got up and walked out of the apartment with Itachi, cracking his shoulders. Recalling their friend's new pastimes, Naruto questioned, do you think we should be worried, leaving her alone with those two? Itachi shuddered a little as they left the apartment building and headed to the furniture store they had ordered from, which was on the opposite side of the village. To their annoyance, they jumped on top of the buildings and ran over, saying, I'd rather have them take after her than those fangirls. However, after a minute of running, Naruto abruptly stopped and his head snapped to his right. Itachi had stopped and leapt beside him, observing him with interest. He questioned, what is it? As Naruto's eyes narrowed and took on a look that Itachi knew was his fight-ready expression. There is a battle going on just right of us about a mile away and it seemed to be a group against one person and that person is not faring well from their emotions and chakra. I recognized the signature, he said before turning to gaze at Itachi. It's Shisui. Itachi and Naruto dashed toward the spot where Naruto had detected Shisui, running as fast as they could along the rooftops. Itachi's expression was intense and focused, and his Sharingan was already fully activated. He asked Naruto, who was running a little behind him, how much further? Before responding, Naruto used his sensor skills to determine Shisui's location. As they both accelerated their pace, Naruto remarked, just over that ridge. He's tiring and I think he's hurt. They both leapt over the ridge and landed at one of the deserted training grounds after a short while. When Naruto noticed that no one was in the area of the training ground, he realized why no one was there to assist or observe what was going on. They both noticed Shisui in front of them, lying on both knees, appearing worn out, and having 2 holes in his chest. Blood was dripping from his mouth, and his breathing was irregular. Naruto and Itachi could tell something was wrong with the 8 Anbu around him based on their masks. They wore a darker version of the uniform and the same masks as the regular Anbu, but they had the Ne symbol in black on their masks. Since neither Naruto nor Itachi had previously encountered this type of Anbu, they were unable to identify the symbol. There were dead Ne Anbu scattered throughout the field. If Naruto's count is to be believed, there were about 20.1, as Shisui had not died easily. They watched as one of the Anbu attempted to kill Shisui, but Itachi dodged the Tonto strike and blocked it before it could land. The Anbu was then thrown into a nearby tree after he twisted it by grabbing its wrist. Itachi moved in front of Shisui as he coughed and spat blood onto the ground, saying, Itachi. Shisui nodded and sagged to the floor as he said, stay behind me. Itachi said, state your business. Why are you attacking my clan member? But the masked figures simply stared at him without answering. There was a brief pause before the Anbu lunged forward to attack Itachi. The 2 Uchiha looked on in shock as a huge wooden wall erupted in front of Itachi, blocking the strikes before he could defend himself. When they raised their heads, they saw Naruto standing atop the wooden wall, his blade out of its sheath. He gazed down at them. Itachi had questions running through his mind. but he decided to put them off until later. I was going to tell you eventually. One of the Anbu stated, without emotion, this one possesses Mokuton. Take him alive. Leader. Sama will want him. The 7 of them moved forward after the other Anbu gave a nod. 3 headed for Itachi, whose Sharingan was now spinning, while 4 headed for Naruto. He followed their movements and retaliated as Anbu went to fight him, pulling a kunai from his pouch and dodging a Tonto swing. He watched as one of the Anbu fell to the ground dead after he ducked another swing and drove one kunai into the back of their head. He turned to the other 2 standing next to each other, one down. Both said, Futon. Daitopa, after going over a few hand signals. When the blast struck Itachi, he exploded into a murder of crows rather than collapsing to the ground or being knocked away. Before a pair of hands grabbed one Anbu and pulled him into the ground, the 2 Anbu looked around. A few seconds later, a severed head was flung from the ground and rolled across the grass. In an attempt to kill Itachi with a torrent of weapons, the final Anbu threw shurikens and kunai down the hole, but after a short while he noticed that there was a tree stump underneath. He heard footsteps behind him, but when he turned to look, he saw that only 2 Sharingans were staring at him. With a kunai in hand, Itachi emerged out of the tree and slashed at his throat, trapping him on the tree. With a gentle thud, the Anbu fell to the ground, dead. Itachi went to Shisui, who was breathing heavily, after noticing that Naruto was managing his Anbu without any issues. After using his blade to block one of the Anbu's blows, Naruto struck one of the Anbu's faces with his fist, shattering their mask and causing a sickening crack to reverberate throughout the area as the Anbu fell to the ground lifeless. Before he could block another blow with his blade and push forward, Naruto ducked a swing and kicked another Anbu in the stomach, sending him to the ground. Naruto performed hand signals while leaping into the air and kicking off from one of the Anbu's shoulders. He yelled, Sweden. Tepudama, as water bullets sped in the direction of the Anbu, who all swiftly dodged the assaults. When they did, however, a shadow clone of Naruto materialized beside one of them and smashed a kunai through his chest. Meanwhile, the real Naruto took advantage of the distraction to kick one of the Anbu's backs with a hard, superpowered axe, crushing him to the ground and shattering his spine. He attempted to throw shurikens at Naruto with the final Anbu who defiantly held their ground, but Naruto's blade materialized in his chest before his hand could even reach into the pouch. Before he fell to the ground as well, tiny splatters of blood appeared beneath the white mask. As he inhaled deeply and wiped a small amount of perspiration from his forehead, he saw that the Anbu that had been smashed into the tree was starting to rise and attempt to flee. Naruto exclaimed, Mokuton. Jubaku no Jutsu, as the Anbu was encircled by wooden branches. However, the Anbu inserted a tiny pill into their mouth and reached into their pouch before their arms were fully locked. Before Naruto could say anything, he saw white foam emerge from beneath the mask, which caused his eyes to widen before he let out a growl. When he pulled off the mask, he noticed foam leaking from his mouth, which meant he had taken a cyanide pill. A green seal glowed on the Anbu's neck, and the body was abruptly set on fire as any remnants of the Anbu were destroyed. Naruto said, damn it, before releasing the body. They were all set on fire, and similar acts were being performed on the other Anbu everywhere. Before approaching Itachi and Shisui, Naruto reflected, whoever they belong to knows some knowledge of seals. Naruto knew right away that Shisui would not live when he knelt on the opposite side of him and noticed the 2 holes in his chest. He glanced up at Itachi, who gave him a brief glance before Naruto gave him a gentle headshake. Itachi's face fell as he turned to face Shisui, who was coughing up more blood and growing very pale. He gasped and gestured for them to lean in closer. Itachi, Naruto, listen to Maya, he said. These Anbu were not regular Anbu. They were part of Danzo's root shinobi. They have been brainwashed into becoming emotionless tools at his disposal. Danzo has this belief that every part of the village needs to be militarized and believes he is the one that will bring Konoha to greatness. All he wants is more power and for Konoha to be under his thumb. Then he turned to Itachi. I tried to go to the clan and use a special genjutsu on the clan members that are revolting, but his root Anbu got to me first and tried to take my Sharingan. After Naruto was taken aback by the news of Uchiha's rebellion against the village, Itachi questioned, why go after your Sharingan? After taking a long, ragged breath, Shisui and the other person watched in awe as his Sharingan changed and took the shape of a shuriken with 4 sides. Itachi and Naruto both exclaimed, Mangekyo Sharingana, because, as far as he knew, no one had ever activated it outside of Madara and Izuna Uchiha. I awoke my Mangekyo Sharingan when I was 12. Since then I have developed a powerful genjutsu called Koto Amatsukami. The technique itself allows the user to enter the opponent's mind and manipulate them by giving them false experiences, making it seem as if they were doing things of their own free will. Naruto exclaimed, "Wow! That might be the most powerful genjutsu technique that I have ever heard. Yes, and Danzo wants my Sharingan. If he gets it, he would no doubt use it for his own goals. He must never be allowed to get my Sharingan or any Sharingan for that matter," he said before turning to face Naruto. After giving it some thought, he said, "How good are you in medical ninjutsu? I know you were taught by Tsunade Senju, who no doubt taught you some of her techniques and medical knowledge." Shisui nodded before coughing violently once more. "I guess I'm okay. Not enough to be classed as a medic.nin, but I know enough when the situation calls for it." He coughed hard once more before continuing, "Good. In that case I need you to do something for me. Take my Sharingan eyes out of my body and store them away. The sooner you do it the better." Shisui clearly knew that Danzo might attempt to reach his corpse in order to get the Sharingan, so even though Naruto and Itachi appeared shocked by the order, they exchanged glances before nodding. "Okay. But I don't have the equipment with me now, but later when you have passed on I can collect the eyes and store them for you." Shisui grinned after nodding. "Good. That is good. After you take them, keep them hidden until Itachi will be in need of them." Itachi asked, not quite understanding, "Why would I be in need of them?" Shisui simply smiled sadly at him. He gave Itachi a final, serious glance before saying, "You will understand soon enough. Do not allow our family to delve into the darkness any further than they already have. If it means you have to take actions against those that would harm our innocent family members, then it should be by our hands to stop them. It's our duty as Uchiha and as shinobi of the leaf to stop those from hurting its people, even if they are part of our village and of our blood." As they heard Shisui's final words, Itachi nodded while silent tears streamed down his cheeks. Naruto was not doing any better. Before his eyes fell and his breathing gradually stopped, Shisui muttered, "Lead us, Itachi. Lead our family into the light and rid them of the darkness once and for all." As Itachi closed Shisui's eyes with his palm and spoke inaudibly, wishing his clansmen and cousin luck in the afterlife, Naruto bowed his head in remembrance of the fallen shinobi. Itachi scrunched his face up and held his eyes as they started to feel like they were burning as he let a few more silent tears fall down his cheeks. Alarmed, Naruto was about to inquire as to what was wrong when he noticed Itachi staring at him while using his Sharingan. He then watched as the three tomos gradually started to move inward to form a three-sided pinwheel. Naruto said, "Itachi, your eyes." Itachi removed his headband and examined his eye's new shape in the metal reflection. Mangekyo Sharingan. The Mangekyo Sharingan is awakened through the trauma experienced from the death of a person very close to the Sharingan user, with the user normally having to witness or experience this firsthand. So that's what Shisui meant. He spoke quietly. Naruto nodded as he said, "Do not tell anyone about my new eyes." He responded, "As long as you tell no one about my Mokuton." Itachi nodded in agreement. After sitting there for a while, they noticed that the flaming corpses had nearly been obliterated and that nearly nothing remained of them. After gathering Shisui's body and enclosing it in a storage scroll, they both left the field and returned home because they needed to speak with the Hokage and removed their eyes. Afterwards, Naruto sensed that Minato, Kushina, and the twins were at his new apartment, clearly wanting to see where he was now living and tell him what they thought of it, so they didn't need to go to the Hokage's office to see him. Additionally, he sensed Hiruzen was present, which was advantageous because they would also need to talk to him. As they entered the apartment, they noticed Minato, Kushina, and Hiruzen conversing with Anko while Naruto's siblings and Ria were seated on their couch, playing and chatting. Kushina was searching the apartment for flaws, but to her dismay, she found it to be quite lovely. She reasoned that at least her son would live with someone respectable. With a little nervousness, Minato scratched the back of his head and said, "Hello Naruto. I hope you don't mind, but your mother and I wanted to see where you now live so we knew where to reach you." They were taken aback, however, when they noticed red circles surrounding their eyes, which meant that Naruto and Itachi had been crying and were giving them a serious look. Itachi said, grabbing her attention, "Anko, could you please take Ria, Mina, Mito and Eiji into your bedroom for a bit? We have matters to discuss with the Hokage." After giving them a perplexed look, Anko shrugged and ushered the four kids into her room. The three adults stare at Itachi and Naruto, unsure of what they wanted to discuss. Itachi spoke as soon as they heard the door click. The three of them gave him startled, wide-eyed looks when he said, "Shisui Uchiha is dead." They did not anticipate hearing that. Minato wanted to know how one of his shinobi died, so he asked in his Hokage voice, "How?" "We found Shisui after Naruto detected him with his sensory abilities. He was in some kind of battle, so we went as quickly as we could. When we arrived, we found he was fighting with a group of Anbu. Only we saw on their masks were Nei symbols. Hiruzen's and Minato's eyes hardened, and the two boys watched. Hiruzen grunted, "Danzo." We took out the Anbu, though Shisui had already killed 24 of them on his own, but his wounds from the battle were too much. He died a few moments later. As they recapped the events, Naruto and Itachi agreed to keep the fact that Danzo was pursuing his Sharingan since it might result in the discovery of both Itachi's and Shisui's Mangekyo Sharingan. Shisui told me that he was going to try and use a genjutsu he created on members of the Uchiha clan. He does not want them to rebel, so he thought it could change their thoughts about it, but Danzo got to him first. While Hiruzen, Kushina, and Minato appeared nervous, Naruto raised his voice. "I already know. Itachi told me and I heard Shisui mention it. It explains why Makoto-sensei has been so jumpy lately." Itachi said, "I have new information on that front as well," while Kushina listened in and Minato and Hiruzen stood ready to listen. Naruto was furious because he had already told him about it on the way back to the apartment. When the adults noticed his response, they pondered what it might be. Naruto made a hand signal and Itachi nodded. He exclaimed, "Fuin," as the adults all watched the silence seals within the apartment come to life. Kushina and Minato both grinned inwardly and leapt with delight at their son's proficiency with an understanding of Fuinjutsu. Minato nodded, understanding that arrangements needed to be made immediately. "My father and the Uchiha members who were carrying out the coup d'etat had a meeting last night. They are going to attempt the coup within the next few days since they are tired of waiting." As the adult's eyes widened, he said, "However, during the meeting the subject of your daughter Mito sprung up." As they all turned to face him, Naruto responded, "The Uchiha clan knows Mito is the Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed fox and they plan on breaking the seal." Kushina and Minato stared at Naruto, speechless. Kushina whispered, "Naruto. How do you know what your sister contains?" Naruto let out a sigh. "I found out when I was 10. I saw the seal by accident, and then when I went to look at the seal I must have accidentally entered some kind of mindscape, because the next thing I know I saw a pair of large red eyes looking at me and threw me out with a roar. Plus I could never forget its chakra after that night." As much as Minato and Kushina wanted to talk to him about it, it had to wait for now as they gave him a sorrowful look. Minato narrowed his eyes at Itachi and said, "How does your family know about Mito's status? It was kept very tight-lipped about it. Only myself and a selected group are aware of it." As Minato gestured for him to go on, he said, "I am unsure, though I do have a suspicion. When I listened in to what they were saying I heard a voice that I did not recognize. When I managed to get a look inside of the room there was a man in a black cloak speaking with my father. There was never a name that was given and I never saw his face, but when he turned around I saw what was in the hood. His face was covered by a mask with a black flame-like pattern and a single hole for his right eye. Afterwards he used some kind of jutsu to teleport away. After that they just spoke about how they would attack and who they would allow to live when they ruled." Naruto turned to face the adult and nodded, but he nearly recoiled at what he saw. His father's eyes had hardened even more and his fists were clenched so tightly that his nails caused his palms to bleed. He gritted his teeth and even felt his body tremble a little. His mother's appearance frightened him more than his father's intimidating appearance. In all the years of his life, he had never witnessed his mother's face display such utter hatred. Her dark violet eyes gave off the impression that they were ready to kill. Hiruzen remarked, "So he came back." Kushina and Minato were trying to control their rage. Since he must have done something awful to have so greatly angered his parents, Naruto questioned, "Who came back? Who is this guy?" He saw his parents turn to each other and talk in low, indistinct voices that Naruto could not hear. They looked at him after a few moments. "Naruto, we know you must have question about who this person is, but now is not the time to tell you. Once the problem with the Uchihas has been solved, then we will tell you what you need to know." After glancing at his parents, Naruto grudgingly nodded. However, he was determined to learn what they were hiding from him. Naruto asked, "So what happens now?" as his father gazed at Itachi with a dejected expression. "They have to be stopped, Itachi. I'm sorry to have to do this, but Fugaku has gone too far now. I don't know how he thinks he will get away with it, but I cannot allow him to put the lives of the people of Konoha in jeopardy." Itachi nodded sadly, knowing deep down that this was what it was always going to be. "Though my father and most of the Uchiha police corps are involved, there are many that want no part in it. My mother and my two siblings Sasuke and Ria must be spared. My mother only has not gone to tell you because he threatened to harm Sasuke and Ria if she did." Minato gave a nod. "Of course. Those that are not involved in the coup will be spared and will not be held responsible for the action of those that want to hurt the village. Hiruzen, who was only a boy when the Uchiha clan first moved to Konoha with the Senju clan and the other clans, lamented, "I hoped it never had to come to this." Both Kushina and Minato nodded, and Kushina's mind shifted to her longtime friend, wondering what Fugaku had done to her. "If that is the fate that falls to the dark part of my family, then I ask you now that you allow me to be the one to draw the curtain on that part of the Uchiha clan. Allow me to end what my father is planning." The adults gave Itachi a startled look. "No, Itachi. I cannot ask you to do that. Not to your own family. It is noble of you, but I will have my best Anbu handle this now. I can't allow you to take on this burden by yourself." Itachi gave a headshake. "I thank you for the consideration, however this is my family. If someone is to be the one to stop the evil that has corrupted my family, then it must be left to me. Shisui told me before he died to help bring the Uchiha out of the darkness and back into the light again. I will do just that." While admiring his desire to be the one to stop it, Minato and Hiruzen looked on with a puzzled expression, wondering if they could really allow a 13-year-old to kill a member of his family. Itachi said, "If I may make a suggestion, if you do not feel easy with me going in alone, then I can think of a fair agreement. You may send with me 2 of your best Anbu to accompany me, but on the condition that I have one person I can fully trust with me." After exchanging silent words for a while, Minato and Hiruzen turned back to face Itachi and nodded. "That is agreeable. I know which 2 Anbu to send with you, though please state who you will pick. We need to know that they are skilled enough and can be trusted." As Naruto moved forward, Kushina let out a small gasp, which Minato and Hiruzen observed. "No, absolutely not," Kushina firmly asserted, but Minato was clearly not paying attention as he looked down at his son with pride and sympathy at wanting to support his friend in this way. Minato felt uneasy that his son wanted to participate in this mission, so he asked, "Naruto, are you sure about this? I know you are strong for your age and could probably defeat all chunins and many of the jonin of this village, but are you positive you want to help with this task?" "I'm positive. I won't let Itachi do this by himself. I will help my friend in this task, and I will not let him take the life of some of his family members all on his own." Itachi nodded in appreciation. "There is no one I trust more in this village than Naruto or my other teammate Anko. They're the only 2 I would fully feel comfortable watching my back." All of the adults were breathing heavily as they looked. Although Kushina was extremely unhappy, as evidenced by the frown on her face, she was aware that Minato had the last word. Once more, Minato and Hiruzen conversed in silence before Minato turned back to the 2 boys. "Very well, Naruto, you will accompany Itachi as well 2 Anbu to infiltrate the Uchiha clan compound and kill those that are attempting to join the coup on the village. Be at my office at 5 p.m. where I will give the briefing to the other 2 Anbu as well as get you fitted for Anbu gear," he said with both boys nodding. Knowing that preparations needed to be made for tonight and that the siblings of Mikoto and Itachi, as well as Naruto's siblings, needed to be protected, Minato then departed with Hiruzen and a grumpy Kushina. This night, Kushina was not going to allow anyone to reach Mito. She took Mito's hand and held it firmly but gently as she led her away after obtaining her children from Anko. Minato waved goodbye to Naruto and picked up Mina and Eiji. Itachi and Naruto hurried to Naruto's room as they were leaving, throwing up more silence seals in the process. Anko wanted to know what the 2 were doing, but they locked the door before she could find out. The action caused her eyebrow to rise, but she brushed it off as just another strange boy thing. Naruto had a jar full of an unidentified substance, a scalpel, and some medical supplies by his foot when Shisui's body was discovered inside his room, unsealed on the floor. He inhaled deeply before carefully opening the dead Shisui's eyelids and using the scalpel to start cutting around the eye to remove the 2 Sharingan. Naruto carefully removed both Sharingan from Shisui's eyes and placed them in the jar after a few minutes. This liquid should conserve them and keep them from them alive, so to speak. Itachi took a storage scroll, sealed the Sharingan inside, and then sealed that scroll on his arm after nodding and taking the jar. Your own body is the best place to keep it safe. That evening, with the moon high in the sky, it was getting close to nightfall, and many people were either heading home for the night or were just beginning to take advantage of Konoha's nightlife. 4 figures stood on the rooftops that overlooked the Uchiha clan compound, and nobody in the vicinity even acknowledged their presence. Each of the 4 had a porcelain white mask on their face with different animal-like markings. Naruto thought, this does feel a little weird being like this, because he had no intention of becoming an Anbu, even if it was only for tonight. In response to his summons, he had chosen a white tiger mask with black stripes. Kakashi looked at Itachi wearing a crow mask and asked, "Where are the targets currently?" while wearing a dog mask. My father is in the central manor while the rest are spread out through the compound. Half would be found in the east wing of the compound. The rest will likely be scattered, but with Naruto's sensor abilities we can find them quickly. My mother and siblings are at the Namikaze house while the rest of the innocent Uchihas are at a safe-guarded bunker with Sandane Sama. Hiruzen believed it was best that Naruto kept an eye on the other Uchiha in case Danzo tried to kill one of them and obtain a Sharingan, so Naruto was happy about that. Naruto said, "Good, we don't want any innocent casualties tonight." Itachi, Kakashi, and the other masked Danbu, known as Tenzo, all nodded. A tri-pronged kunai that Naruto's father had given him to use to call upon him in an emergency, should something go wrong, was lying in his pouch. If something did not go as planned, Minato wanted his son to be able to call him. In the meantime, his mother had stayed with Mito all day and had even brought Tsunade and Shizune inside to keep an eye on her in case the masked individual attacked. He was curious as to why his parents were so upset and concerned about this man. He was startled out of his reverie when he noticed a messenger hawk fly overhead, signaling for him to approach. Before the four leapt from the rooftops and proceeded to finish their mission, Naruto glanced at Itachi and nodded. Together, Kakashi and Tenzo took the west wing, with Naruto and Itachi taking care of the others. 3 Uchiha were seen strolling together as Naruto and Itachi ran along the rooftops. As Naruto nodded and both started to get ready, he remarked, "That's Yashira, Anabi, and Tekka, 3 of my father's biggest supporters." The 3 Uchiha turned on their Sharingan and turned their gaze to the roof they were standing on as they crossed the street. But when they looked, nothing was there. Itachi was ahead of them when they turned around, kicking Tekka to the ground as he bled out in silence and driving a kunai into his throat. Yashira roared, "Traitor!" before the Shisui passed through his heart and chest. Before his eye rolled into the back of his head, he glanced down at the blade. Naruto's Anbu mask was the last thing he saw. With his Sharingan flared with rage, Anabi snatched a kunai from his own pouch and slashed at Itachi. But Itachi drew his tanto out of its sheath and dodged it with ease. He swung and removed Inabi's head. He nodded to Naruto, who quickly opened some containment scrolls and sealed the bodies inside after the 3 Uchiha were killed. They went on to their next target after it was finished. As Naruto and Itachi broke through a wall with a startled Uchiha about to eat dinner, Naruto uttered the words, "In that house." In just a few seconds, Naruto had snapped his neck and sealed him in a storage scroll before he could even react. The rebel Uchiha did not even know what had hit them, and it continued in this manner for the next 10 minutes. Naruto and Itachi killed 28 of the rebellious Uchiha because they were caught off guard. None had been able to resist much and had all perished in a matter of seconds. While Itachi used his Kajin fire attack to pierce the chest and instantly kill his target, Naruto swung his blade and decapitated the head of one of the Uchiha who attempted to strike him with a Tanto blade. By the end, Naruto was covered in blood, and Itachi and he walked down the streets in silence because they both knew that the majority of the Uchiha traitors had been eliminated by this point. The fact that Tenzo and Kakashi were both alive and that Naruto could sense them during the mission indicated that everything had gone well for them. Following a few minutes of waiting, Tenzo and Kakashi emerged in front of them, both covered in blood, with Kakashi holding several storage scrolls. He handed them to Itachi after turning to face him. While Naruto and Itachi concentrated on the building in front of them, Tenzo and Kakashi glanced at the two before they disappeared from the compound. Only one remained. Uchiha Fugaku, Naruto and Itachi made their way to the compound's main house and entered. Fugaku was detected by Naruto. "He is in your parents' bedroom." They both nodded as they went up the stairs and down the corridor. Itachi stood outside his parents' room after counting his steps. He looked over at Naruto. "I must do this on my own." After hearing nothing more, Naruto nodded and leaned against a wall to watch Itachi open the door to the dimly lit room and enter. With haste, the door shut behind him. Not wanting to leave it to chance, Naruto created a few shadow clones to scout the compound and ensure that every body had been picked up. Within the room, calm and collected, Itachi entered the room and turned to face his father, who was kneeling and gazing out the window at the moon. Itachi approached and came to a halt directly behind his dad. "So you have made your choice. Your mother has chosen this path as well?" he inquired. "Yes, she has, as well as Sasuke and Ria." Fugaku nodded his head while maintaining a fixed gaze on the moon, avoiding Itachi. Fugaku turned to glance at Itachi and said, "It seems I have failed this clan just like my predecessors before me. Perhaps you can finally bring our family's curse to an end. You are the man of the house now. Look after your mother and siblings. The clan is in your hands now, and beware the masked one." He will try to influence you or anyone else in the Uchiha clan. As tears streamed down Itachi's face behind his Anbu mask and his hold on his Tanto trembled, Fugaku remarked, "I may not show it, but I am proud of you, Itachi." He calmed himself by taking a deep breath and reaffirming his hold on the Tanto. Then he pushed it forward and pierced his father's heart. As life left him, Fugaku made a few strangled noises before his body finally sagged to the ground, his mouth and eyes shut as he entered the afterlife. As he gazed at his father's lifeless body, Itachi sniffed and his breathing became a little erratic, but he braced himself. Later, he could vent his sorrow. Even though the man was a traitor, he was still his father. Not wanting to be in the room any longer, he hurriedly sealed the body away and left. When he got outside, he nodded to Naruto, indicating that it was finished. "My clones have swept the area. All Uchiha rebels have been killed and stored. There are none left." As Naruto nodded in agreement and hurriedly left the house and returned outside, Itachi said softly, "Then it is time to go." Naruto halted the two boys as they were ready to leap to the roofs after spotting an unfamiliar signature concealed in a tree a short distance from the compound. They appeared to be staring at them. Naruto inhaled and turned to face the tree, but he saw that nobody was there. The air from one of the branches seemed to be sucked away, but he could swear he saw it ripple. This night has been long. Before he followed Itachi, he thought, "I'm feeling things that aren't there." House of Namikaze with her hands in her lap and her mind racing with worries about her oldest child, Makoto sat on one of the couches. After using a spare bed that was placed in the twins' room, Sasuke was also asleep. Kushina had covered that room with so many protection seals and barriers that it resembled a Christmas tree when they were all activated. Near them, with Shizune, Kushina was seated next to her friends and Tsunade. Next to Kushina, Minato was leaning against the wall. When they left, only Fugaku was left, and Itachi and Naruto were both okay. Kakashi and Tenzo had already left, filling in what they could. Everyone in the room felt better very quickly, but they were still concerned about the two boys. Kushina stood up and began pacing, saying, "I don't like this. They should have been back by now." Makoto nodded in agreement as Tsunade said, "They will be fine. Those two can handle it. Naruto and Itachi are the best of the next generation. They can get this mission done. I know my two students. I know that independently they are very strong, but together I have no doubt they would be near unbeatable." Kushina kept pacing while listening. They all heard footsteps approaching them and the door opening and closing just as she was ready to speak again. They were relieved when Naruto and emotionless Itachi entered through the doorway. But when the adults saw all the blood covering their children, they felt ashamed of themselves and sick to their stomachs. While Minato questioned whether he was right to allow them to do this, Makoto and Kushina wanted to cry. Itachi said, "The mission is complete, Hokage. Sama." Everyone nodded when Naruto revealed the seal, saying, "The bodies of all the Uchiha are in storage scrolls that Naruto has sealed on his wrists." Minato gently inquired, "How many did you take down?" Naruto was the one who responded, "About 28, while Kakashi and Tenzo took out around 25, I believe." Minato took the response. There was no one else around. Just the team and the Uchihas? Despite Naruto's somewhat suspicious appearance, Itachi nodded yes without expressing his own thoughts. When his parents noticed, they would later question him about it. They gave them a quick summary of what had transpired, including any new information. When it was finished, they saw Makoto get up and approach Itachi. She said softly, "Itachi, take off that mask." Itachi remained motionless. He didn't really react at all. Makoto's expression was one of rage. With a little more force in her voice, she said, "Take off that mask and look at me." Following a brief period of silence, Itachi's hands tentatively approached his mask and removed the crow mask. When he did, Makoto watched as tears continued to stream down Itachi's face, crying and feeling heartbroken. Makoto put her son's head in the crook of her neck and quickly wrapped him in a tight hug. Without saying a word, Itachi simply wrapped his arms around his mother and wept, oblivious to the onlookers. Naruto sniffled and wiped some tears from his eyes as everyone else looked sad. He felt arms encircling him as well. He watched Kushina encircle him with her arms and keep him near her. As his mother caressed the back of his head and allowed the weariness of the night to finally take over, Naruto eased into her and gave her a gentle hug in return. Later that evening Naruto had one last task to complete, so he went into the kitchen of the house after taking a shower and eating something. He wore some comfortable, extra clothing that he had packed. Seeing that her oldest child needed her the most at the moment after what he had to do and taking his father's life, Makoto had taken Itachi into the spare room and agreed to spend the night with him. As his siblings and Itachi slept soundly, As though nothing had happened, Tsunade and Shizune had gone to bed and were returning home. As he entered the kitchen, he noticed his parents seated at the table, both of them silent. When he entered the kitchen and sat down in front of them, they gazed up at him. "You both said you would give me answers. I want those answers now." Despite their dejected expressions, Minato and Kushina both nodded. Their son was different from other kids, but they did not anticipate having to tell him at such a young age. Now that they saw that, they knew he could handle it. Minato was the one who spoke and started telling him. "We will tell you the truth about that night on October 10th.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.